The greatest stories ever told often begin at the end. We are about to unlock the 34 secret mechanisms that build such legendary plots. These ancient narrative devices manipulate time itself to hold our attention across centuries. By the end of this exploration, you will possess a master key to understanding the hidden architecture of your favorite myths. How can a hero be doomed by a prophecy yet still surprise us? What if the clues to a story's climax were hidden in its very first scene? What single story from your own life would you relive if you could change the outcome? A straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, but it rarely makes for a great story. This is the profound truth that ancient storytellers understood instinctively. They recognized that our lives are not lived in a simple, forward march. We are constantly pulled by memories of the past and pulled by anxieties and hopes for the future. The most basic form of a story, the linear narrative, mimics this simple forward motion. We meet a hero, they face a challenge, they overcome it or they fail, and the story ends. It is clean, it is clear, and for many tales, it is perfectly sufficient. But for the stories that are meant to last for millennia, for the legends that define entire cultures, this linear path is merely the canvas, not the painting itself. Consider the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest stories humanity possesses. On its surface, it is a linear quest. A powerful king, Gilgamesh, loses his beloved friend Enkidu and embarks on a journey to find the secret of eternal life. He travels, he faces trials, he ultimately fails in his primary goal. A linear summary would end there, but the epic's true power lies in how it shatters that simple timeline. Gilgamesh is not just acting in the present, he is haunted by the past, by the ghost of his friend, and he is utterly consumed by a future he fears, the future of his own death. His journey is as much about securing his name in the future, his legacy, as it is about his immediate grief. The story forces us to see time as Gilgamesh sees it, a tangled web of memory, dread, and ambition. This foundational weaving of past, present, and future is the first and most crucial rule for understanding the legendary plots to come. You cannot appreciate the beauty of a time loop or the cleverness of a flash forward until you first understand the standard, unbroken thread of chronological order. It is the steady, predictable beat of a drum that makes the surprising syncopation of a complex rhythm so thrilling. By establishing the normal flow of time, these ancient narratives give themselves the solid ground from which to leap into the impossible. They teach us the rules only to show us with breathtaking artistry how those rules can be masterfully broken. This foundational weaving of time gives us the first and most elegant of the 34 loops, the prophetic dream. A dream is a perfect vessel for this narrative magic, a private cinema where the future is projected into the present mind. A character experiences a vision of events that have not yet happened, and this foreknowledge loops back to influence their actions in the now. It is a closed circuit of cause and effect where the ending, in a sense, helps write the beginning. In the cold, stark halls of Norse mythology, the Allfather Odin is tormented by this very device. He dreams, he sees visions of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. He witnesses the great wolf Fenrir breaking free, the world serpent Jormungandr rising from the ocean, and the gods themselves falling in a final, catastrophic battle. This is not a passive nightmare. This vision of the future sends him on a desperate, looping quest in the present. He seeks knowledge, he gathers warriors for Valhalla, he makes pacts and sacrifices, all in a frantic attempt to avert the destiny he has already seen. And in doing so, his every action, driven by that future vision, makes that future more certain. the loop is complete. The vision creates the actions that ensure the vision comes true. For the audience, this is a masterstroke of engagement. We are not just watching a story unfold. We become active participants, co-conspirators with the storyteller. When we share Odin's dream, our minds are also seeded with the imagery of the final battle. From that moment on, we are not merely following the plot. We are deciphering it. We watch every new character, every new conflict, and we ask ourselves, is this the one? Is this the event that will lead to the serpent's rise? Is this the betrayal that will unleash the wolf? The dream acts as a powerful narrative anchor, holding fast a distant future timeline and connecting it directly to the present action. It builds a profound and inescapable suspense because the story is not racing toward an unknown conclusion, but toward one we have already glimpsed. The tension shifts from what will happen to how it will happen, and more importantly, why the characters cannot stop it. This loop forces a timeless question upon the characters and upon us. Do they have any real choice? When Odin, armed with the terrible knowledge of his own end, struggles to change it, is he exercising free will, or is he simply performing the precise series of actions required to fulfill the prophecy? The dream loop makes the future a ghost that haunts the present, a destiny that feels both inevitable and, tragically, created by the very efforts to avoid it. A prophecy is a promise whispered from the future, and like any promise, it demands to be kept. This brings us to the second powerful time loop, the oracular utterance and its inevitable fulfillment. Here, destiny speaks aloud, not in the private dream of a single character, but through the public voice of a seer or an oracle. This spoken prophecy becomes the engine of the entire plot, a narrative seed that grows into a tangled, inescapable tree whose roots are its own branches. The ancient Greek tragedy of Oedipus stands as the ultimate testament to this loop's devastating power. Before he is even born, a prophecy declares he will kill his father and marry his mother. Horrified, his parents take drastic action, piercing his ankles and abandoning him to die. This is the first critical turn of the loop, the first attempt to defy fate. But of course, the child is saved, raised by another family, and grows into a proud man. When Oedipus himself hears the same prophecy, he flees his adopted home, terrified of harming the people he believes are his true parents. On that very journey, he encounters a stranger at a crossroads, argues with him, and kills him. That stranger was his biological father. He then travels to Thebes, solves the riddle of the Sphinx, and is rewarded with the throne and the hand of the widowed queen, his biological mother. Every single choice made from a place of fear and a desire to avoid the prophecy becomes the precise step that locks it into reality. The loop is a perfect, tragic circle. The prophecy creates the actions that guarantee the prophecy comes true. This loop forces a brutal question upon us, one that echoes far beyond the ancient stage. Does knowing the future grant us the power to change it, or does that knowledge itself become the very chain that binds us to a predetermined path? When a king hears he will be overthrown by his son-in-law and thus banishes all potential suitors, he is not preventing his fate. He is setting the stage for a lone hero to arrive in secret, win his daughter's heart, and fulfill the prophecy precisely because the king tried to stop it. The characters believe they are exercising their free will, making rational choices to secure their safety. But the narrative reveals their will was never truly free. It was merely a component in a larger, inescapable mechanism. For the audience, this creates a unique and agonizing form of suspense. We are not wondering what will happen. We know the terrible end from the very beginning. Instead, we watch in fascinated horror as the characters, with all their intelligence and passion, walk directly into the trap that was set for them by their own fears. We see every crossroads, every decision, and we understand its tragic significance long before they do. This transforms the story from a simple mystery into a profound meditation on the human condition, on our struggle against forces that seem larger than ourselves. It asks us if our lives are a path we carve, or a story that has already been written, a story we are merely acting out, line by inevitable line. The attempt to escape fate often forges its own prison, but what if the story itself refused to end? A third powerful loop moves beyond a single lifetime, spinning the narrative into the vast cosmic wheel of rebirth and reincarnation. Here, characters and their core conflicts are not resolved in one go, but are destined to repeat across different lifetimes, suggesting the entire universe operates on a cycle of death and renewal. This is not a simple plot device. It is a grand philosophical statement woven into the fabric of the story itself. In the rich tapestry of Hindu mythology, this concept is known as Samsara. It is the endless cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth, where every soul journeys through countless existences. The engine driving this cycle is karma, the spiritual principle of cause and effect. Actions in one life, both good and bad, create consequences that must be addressed in the next. A soul might be born into a position of poverty to learn humility, or into great power to learn compassion, all in a continuous effort to work through its accumulated karma and ultimately achieve liberation. For a storyteller, this loop provides an immense canvas. The current narrative we are witnessing is suddenly revealed as just one single scene in a play that has been running for eternity. A hero's struggle against a tyrannical king is no longer a one-time event. It could be the latest battle in a war their souls have been fighting for 1,000 years. A tragic love story cut short by death carries the heartbreaking promise, or perhaps the dread, that these two souls will find each other again and again, forced to confront their unresolved passions and mistakes across the ages. This transforms the scale of the entire plot. Individual fates are no longer isolated. They are intimately connected to a universal, moral order. The prince is not just avenging his father, he is balancing a karmic debt from 3 lifetimes ago. The wise mentor is not just offering advice, she is fulfilling a promise she made in a previous incarnation. This loop allows for profound themes of redemption to play out over centuries, not just chapters. A villain in one life could be a hero in the next, their soul slowly learning and evolving through experience. It introduces a unique form of foreshadowing, where a character feels an inexplicable pull toward a place or a person, a deep-seated déjà vu that hints at a history written not in books, but in the very essence of their being. The tension shifts from whether a goal will be achieved in this life, to whether the soul will finally learn the lesson it needs to break the cycle itself. The story becomes a single, crucial step on an infinite journey, asking us to consider if our own lives might be part of a much larger, repeating pattern we are only just beginning to understand. Sisyphus stands forever in the shadow of his own rock, a king condemned by the gods to push a boulder up a mountain only to watch it roll back down every time it nears the summit. His punishment is not the labor itself, but the utter futility of it, the perfect, maddening loop of effort without progress. This ancient myth gives us the fourth powerful time loop, the narrative of repetition for redemption. Here, a character is trapped, forced to relive the same day, the same event, or the same futile task not for eternity, but until they finally learn the lesson hidden within the cycle itself. The modern name for this is the Groundhog Day loop, but its soul is as old as the mountains Sisyphus climbs. The profound difference and the source of its narrative power lies in the potential for change. Sisyphus is static, his punishment designed to break his spirit, but in the redemption loop, the character is dynamic. The timeline is fixed, but their choices within it are not. Each repetition becomes a laboratory for the soul. A selfish person reliving the same day might first use their knowledge for personal gain, but after countless loops of empty satisfaction, a subtle shift occurs. They might perform a small, unnoticed kindness. They might finally listen to a piece of conversation they always ignored. These tiny, incremental changes in action, these nuances of choice, are the key that slowly unlocks the prison door. The loop is no longer a punishment of futility, but a curriculum for growth. It forces the character, and by extension the audience, to examine the building blocks of their own life. What would you do if you had infinite chances at the same single day? Would you seek every pleasure, master every skill, or would you eventually be driven to connect, to help, to love? The loop masterfully demonstrates that even within a seemingly rigid and predetermined structure, our internal world remains a realm of infinite possibility. The external events repeat, but the characters' reactions, their empathy, their understanding can evolve. This transforms the narrative from a simple puzzle to be solved into a powerful metaphor for personal transformation. We may not be literally reliving yesterday, but how many of us are stuck in our own loops, repeating the same arguments, falling into the same habits, facing the same frustrations? The myth tells us that the way out is not to push the boulder harder up the same mountain, but to finally look at the mountain from a different angle, to see the path we were too stubborn or too blind to notice before. The escape arrives not when the character changes the world, but when the world finally changes the character. A story can sometimes fight back against its own characters. This is the essence of the fifth loop, the self-correcting timeline. Imagine the universe itself as a master storyteller, one who will not tolerate any edits to its grand narrative. In this loop, events are not merely destined to happen, they are actively protected. Any attempt to change the predetermined outcome is met with a cosmic recalibration, a subtle or brutal rewriting of reality that steers everything back onto its intended path. The threads of fate are not just woven, they are self-mending. This concept finds its most potent expression in the figures of the Fates from Greek mythology and their northern counterparts, the Norns. These beings are not just predictors of destiny, they are its weavers. They sit at the foot of the world tree, spinning, measuring, and cutting the threads of every mortal life. Their tapestry is the story of existence itself, and it is a story that has already been written. When a hero in such a tale learns of a grim prophecy and tries to avert it, their efforts do not create a new branch on the tree of time. Instead, the entire tree bends to ensure the hero's rebellion becomes the very cause of the prophecy's fulfillment. A king might try to kill the infant prophesied to overthrow him, only for that child to be saved and raised in secret, growing up with a burning desire for vengeance he would never have possessed otherwise. The timeline corrected itself, using the king's own fear as the instrument of its design. This creates a story that feels both inevitable and tragically beautiful. There is a profound, almost melancholic order to it all. The characters are not stupid or weak. They are simply acting within a narrative whose gravity is too powerful to escape. Their struggles, their brilliant plans, their heartfelt sacrifices, all of it is absorbed into the story's immune system and used to reinforce the original plot. This loop reinforces a humbling theme about the limits of mortal intervention. It suggests that some stories, some truths about the nature of existence, are so fundamental that they possess their own immense gravitational pull towards a single, necessary conclusion. The beauty we find is not in a happy ending, but in the majestic, unstoppable machinery of the cosmos itself. and in the poignant, fleeting courage of those who try to change it. Bloodlines can be prisons built by the dead for the living. This is the sixth loop, the ancestral curse, where a single act of wrong from a forgotten age echoes through generations, binding descendants in a repetitive cycle of tragedy they never asked for but are forced to inherit. The past refuses to stay buried, actively reaching forward to strangle the present. No family embodies this terrifying loop more than the doomed house of Atreus in Greek mythology. The cycle begins with King Tantalus, who commits an unspeakable crime against the gods by serving them his own son at a feast. This foundational act of betrayal and sacrilege unleashes a curse that stains his bloodline for generations. His grandson, Atreus, continues the pattern, murdering his own nephews and feeding them to their father, his brother Theists. The curse then tightens its grip on the next generation, when Atreus's own son, Agamemnon, is forced to sacrifice his daughter to appease the gods for a chance at victory in the Trojan War. Upon his return, his wife Clytemnestra, enraged by the murder of their child, kills him in his bath. Their son, Orsts, is then driven by duty and divine command to avenge his father by killing his own mother. The loop is a relentless chain of murder and revenge, where every act of violence is both a response to a past crime and the cause of the next one. The curse connects personal actions to a vast, inescapable legacy of consequence. It shows us that the past is never truly dead. It is not even past. It lives in the very blood and bone of the characters, in the expectations placed upon them, and in the debts they are born owing. This narrative device allows a story to explore profound themes of inherited guilt. Are we responsible for the sins of our fathers? Can a person be condemned for a crime committed before they were born? The emotional weight of this loop is immense because the characters are not just fighting external enemies, they are battling the ghosts of their own lineage. The story forces us to watch as good people, or at least people capable of goodness, are twisted and broken by a history they cannot escape. Yet within this grim cycle lies the story's most powerful question. Is it possible to break the chain? Can a single generation, armed with self-awareness and a different kind of courage, choose to stop the cycle of retaliation? The possibility of breaking free, of finally laying the ancestral ghost to rest, is what gives these tales their tragic beauty and their enduring, heartbreaking hope. A hero can outlive his own story. This is the seventh loop, the eternal return, where a single archetypal figure transcends death itself to be reborn in the hour of a culture's greatest need. The hero is no longer a man, but a mythic constant, a promise written into the very fabric of destiny. The legend of King Arthur is the perfect vessel for this powerful idea. He is the once and future king, a ruler who brought a golden age to Britain and who, upon his mortal wounding, was taken to the Isle of Avalon. The legend insists he did not truly die. He sleeps, waiting for the prophesied hour when his nation faces its darkest peril, at which time he will rise again, Excalibur in hand, to restore light and order. This is not a simple story about one man's life. It is a story about the life of hope itself. The promise of Arthur's return creates a narrative loop that spans centuries. Every crisis, every invasion, every period of moral decay becomes a potential trigger for the cycle to complete itself. The story never truly ends, it only pauses, holding the audience in a state of perpetual, hopeful anticipation. This structure provides a profound psychological comfort. It suggests that the universe is not chaotic or indifferent, but possesses a built-in moral balance. When evil rises too high, a counterforce will inevitably emerge to meet it. The hero becomes a perpetual force for good, an ever-present potential waiting in the wings of history. For the audience, this transforms the hero from a historical figure into a living symbol. Arthur is not just a king from the past, he is a possibility for the future. This idea inspires a unique form of resilience. It teaches that no darkness is permanent, that help, in some form, is always imaginable. It allows people to endure their own trials, their own personal winters, by connecting their struggle to a grand, cyclical narrative of fall and redemption. The Eternal Return answers a deep human longing for a savior, not as a one-time event, but as a recurring feature of our world. It asks us to consider what heroes we are waiting for in our own time, and what qualities they must embody to truly heal a broken world. A journey to the bottom of the sea can cost a man his entire world. This is the eighth loop, the mythic time dilation, where the steady clockwork of one realm ticks at a wildly different pace than another. It is a loop that warps the very fabric of time, creating a heartbreaking gap between experience and consequence. The Japanese legend of Yorishima Taro is the quintessential tale of this phenomenon. A kind fisherman rescues a turtle and is rewarded with a visit to the magnificent undersea palace of the dragon god, the Ryugu-jo. There, he is entertained by the Princess Ottoheim, and days of wonder and delight slip by like a gentle stream. But a restless longing for his home and his aging mother eventually stirs in his heart. When he bids farewell, the princess gives him a beautiful, intricately carved box, the Tametbako, with one strict warning: he must never open it. He returns to his village only to find everything unrecognizable. The coastline has shifted, the people are strangers, and his own home has crumbled to dust. In what felt like a few days beneath the waves, centuries have passed on the shore. His family, his friends, his entire life have long since turned to memory and earth. In his despair and confusion, he forgets the princess's warning and opens the forbidden box. A wisp of smoke escapes, and in an instant, he ages the hundreds of years he had skipped, collapsing into a pile of dust. The loop here is one of tragic disconnection. Taro's brief, blissful absence created an unbridgeable chasm in the timeline of his own life. His personal story was paused, while the world's story raced ahead without him. This narrative device masterfully explores the fragility of human connection and the relentless, unforgiving nature of time. It forces us to confront a profound sense of loss, not for a person, but for an entire era, for the shared context that makes a life meaningful. He did not just lose his family, he lost his century, his place in history. The story serves as a poignant metaphor for any profound experience that changes us so fundamentally that we can never truly go home again. We return from a great journey, a transformative education, or even a period of intense personal struggle, to find that the world we left behind has moved on and the person we were no longer fits. The Tametbako, the beautiful, forbidden box, represents the dangerous allure of trying to reclaim a past that is gone forever. By opening it, Taro sought an answer, a way back, but instead he only accelerated the finality of his loss. The time dilation loop is a gentle, devastating reminder that our perception is not reality. A day of joy can feel like a moment, while a moment of grief can feel like an eternity. But the universe's clock keeps its own impartial time, and sometimes the price of a magical journey is the entire life you left behind. The sun itself must fight for its right to rise each morning. This is the ninth loop, the ritual repetition as narrative, where a sacred act must be performed not once but cyclically, to hold back the encroaching chaos and maintain the cosmic order. The story is no longer about a single quest with a final victory, but about the eternal labor required to sustain existence itself. In the vast, star-filled sky of Egyptian mythology, the sun god Ra embarks on this most vital of journeys. Each night, as the sun sets in the west, Ra enters his solar bark and begins a treacherous voyage through the 12 hours of the underworld, the Duat. This is not a passive journey. He is assailed each night by the serpent god of chaos, Apep, a primordial force of nothingness that seeks to devour the sun and plunge the world into eternal darkness. Ra, aided by other gods and the protective magic of spells from the Book of the Dead, must defeat Apep every single night. His victory is never permanent. The serpent reforms in the depths, ready to attack again when the bark returns. This ritual battle, repeated with the unwavering rhythm of the cosmos, is the engine of the world. The entire plot of reality is tied to this cycle. The stakes could not be higher, for the failure of the ritual means the end of day, the end of life, the end of everything. This loop builds a narrative structure that mirrors the very heartbeat of nature. We see the phases of preparation as the gods gather their weapons and chant their spells. We witness the execution, the fierce, nightly battle in the gloom of the Duat, and we experience the consequence, the glorious sunrise that signals another day secured for humanity. Each cycle is the same in its overarching purpose, yet each night can introduce a new variation, a new obstacle, or a moment of heightened peril that keeps the eternal from becoming monotonous. For the audience, this creates a profound connection to the world of the story. The sun rising outside your window is no longer a simple fact of astronomy. It is the proof of a god's successful struggle hours before. It transforms the mundane into the miraculous. This loop teaches that order is not a default state, but a fragile condition that must be actively, tirelessly defended. It asks us to consider what rituals, large or small, sustain our own worlds. What daily battles do we fight to keep our own personal chaos at bay? And what would happen if we, just for a single day, simply stopped? The gods themselves are not immune to forgetting who they are. A 10th loop traps characters in the labyrinth of their own lost minds, where memory is the thread they must find to escape. This is the Amnesiac hero's journey, a story where the protagonist must relive their own past through fragmented recollections, creating a loop of revelation for both themselves and the audience. We see this powerfully in myths of deities who walk among mortals, stripped of their divine knowledge. They live a humble human life, unaware of the power sleeping within them. A sudden trigger, a familiar face, or a forgotten song can shatter this illusion, delivering a piece of the puzzle. Each recovered memory is not a simple fact. It is a seismic event that recontextualizes the entire narrative. The kind farmer who remembers he is a god of thunder does not just gain power, he gains a past, a set of cosmic responsibilities, and a web of relationships he had forgotten. The present moment is constantly being rewritten by the returning past. For the audience, this loop is a masterclass in suspense. We are not just watching a hero move forward, we are digging backward with them. Every new character they meet, every location they visit, is viewed through a dual lens. Who is this person truly, and what role did they play in the hero's forgotten life? The story becomes an active investigation into identity itself. The central, haunting question this loop forces upon us is profound. Are we merely the sum total of our experiences, a collection of memories? Or is there an essential self, a soul or a core identity that remains even when every memory is wiped away? Does the Amnesiac god, living as a mortal, become mortal in spirit? Or is his divinity an unchangeable truth, waiting beneath the surface like a buried city? The memory loop allows a story to explore the very nature of being. It demonstrates that our past is not a separate country we visit occasionally, but the foundation upon which our present self is built. To lose that foundation is to be adrift in time, caught in a loop of trying to become who you already were. A sword in a stone can hold an entire kingdom's fate within its blade. This is the first of our foreshadowing tricks, the symbolic object with a hidden history. It appears to be a simple artifact, a mere prop in the opening act, but it is in fact a narrative seed planted deep within the story's soil. Its true meaning only blossoms much later, tying together past, present, and future in a single, elegant thread. Take Excalibur, the sword in the stone from Arthurian legend. When we first encounter it, it is a test, a divine mechanism to identify the true king of Britain. The young Arthur pulls it free, and in that moment the story seems to be about proving his raw, innate worthiness. But the sword is so much more than a key to the throne. Its entire existence is a promise, a physical echo of a destiny written long before Arthur was born. The sword connects him to a mystical past, to the Lady of the Lake who forged it in enchanted waters, and it projects his authority into every future decision he will ever make. When he raises Excalibur in battle, he is not just wielding a weapon, he is manifesting the legitimacy of his entire reign. The object becomes the story's central pole, around which every event, every loyalty, and every betrayal must inevitably revolve. This trick transforms a passive viewer into an active detective. When a narrative carefully focuses on an object early on, a crown, a locket, a simple ring, it whispers a promise to the audience. This matters, remember this, we file it away in our minds, and as the plot unfolds, we wait for the moment its significance will be revealed. That eventual unveiling creates a deeply satisfying click of understanding, an aha moment where scattered pieces of the plot suddenly snap into a coherent picture. The object acts as a tangible bridge between timelines. A locket given in the first act might contain a portrait that reveals a hidden parentage in the final act, instantly rewriting everything we thought we knew about a character's motivations and the history that shaped them. It demonstrates that the past is never inert. It is stored in physical things, waiting for the right hand, the right moment to unlock its dormant power. This is the magic of the symbolic object. It carries the weight of history and the seed of destiny, all while looking like just another part of the scenery. A prophecy can be disguised as a casual aside. The second foreshadowing trick is the seemingly insignificant prophecy, a prediction delivered so offhandedly that it barely registers as important. It is a whisper in a thunderstorm, easily missed but destined to echo through the entire story. In the ancient Norse Volsunga saga, a tale of cursed gold and bloody revenge, a moment like this occurs between the hero Sigurd and the wise, doomed Brynhild. As they speak, a leaf flutters down and lands on Sigurd's shoulder. Brynhild looks at it and makes a simple, almost offhand observation. She tells him that just as this leaf has fallen between them, so too will their plans be divided and broken by an outside force. At the moment, it feels like poetic musing, a melancholic comment on the fragility of life. But this tiny, natural event becomes a devastating piece of narrative code. That single leaf foreshadows a profound betrayal, a magical deception that will indeed tear them apart and lead to tragedy for everyone involved. The genius of this technique is its subtlety. It does not announce its importance with a fanfare. It trusts the audience to listen closely, to file away a detail that feels emotionally resonant even if its logical weight is not yet clear. This transforms the experience of the story from passive watching into active participation. We are no longer just consumers of the plot, we are its detectives. When the eventual betrayal unfolds, that memory of the leaf clicks into place. The surprise is not lessened, but it is layered with a deep sense of tragic inevitability. We are surprised by how it happened, not that it happened because the story had already given us the key. We just did not know it was a key at the time. This teaches a crucial lesson about the architecture of legendary plots. Nothing is there by accident. Every line of dialogue, every minor character, every fleeting image in a well-crafted myth is a thread in a grand tapestry. The storyteller demonstrates a god-like control over the narrative, proving that the ending was woven into the fabric of the beginning all along. The smallest, most easily dismissed element can be the cornerstone of the entire structure, waiting for the right moment to reveal its true supporting role. This makes the final revelation feel less like a twist and more like a remembering, a sudden understanding of a truth that was always there, hiding in plain sight. Your own reflection can become your greatest enemy. This third foreshadowing trick uses the doppelganger or mirror image, a double that appears to warn of a coming fracture or fusion of identities. When a character encounters their own duplicate or a figure that mirrors their appearance or abilities, the story is signaling a deep internal conflict soon to erupt into the open. It is a visual prophecy of a divided self. The Norse trickster Loki is a master of this illusion. His very nature is fluid, and he constantly adopts the forms of others, from a fly to a mare to an old woman. Each disguise is not merely a tool, it is a hint, a piece of foreshadowing that reveals his core identity is not fixed. His ability to become anyone whispers the terrifying truth that he might, in fact, be no one, a collection of masks with nothing solid underneath. This prepares us for the ultimate chaos he will unleash, because a being without a true self is capable of any betrayal, any act, for they are not breaking a consistent character, they are simply changing costumes once more. The doppelganger forces the story to confront profound questions of identity and destiny. Are we a single, unified person, or a collection of conflicting potential selves? When a hero meets his darker double on a lonely road, the confrontation is not just a physical battle, it is a debate about which version of his soul will ultimately prevail. The mirror image foreshadows that the character's greatest challenge will not be an external monster, but the monster they could become. This trick shatters our initial perceptions. The kindly mentor who has an identical twin appearing in a vision is suddenly cast in a new, uncertain light. Is the twin a separate person, or a symbol of a hidden, malevolent side to the mentor we thought we knew? The story teaches us to question the very faces of the characters we trust. It suggests that every person contains multitudes, and that the gentle friend might harbor a ruthless shadow, a potential that is waiting for the right moment or the right temptation to step into the light. The appearance of the double is the story's way of telling us to look closer, to see the fractures beneath the surface, because the true nature of everyone involved is far more complex and dangerous than it first appears. The world itself can whisper its secrets to those who know how to listen. This is the fourth trick of foreshadowing, the environmental omen, where the setting ceases to be a simple backdrop and becomes a prophet. The wind, the water, the very soil underfoot all turn into active participants, broadcasting the coming drama through subtle and terrifying signs. Before a great battle in the Irish Ulster cycle, the land does not remain a passive stage. It reacts. Crops may wither overnight without frost or blight, a silent hunger preceding the violence. Rivers might run sluggish and dark, as if filling with the blood that has yet to be spilled. These are not coincidences, they are a form of narrative code, a language spoken by the universe of the story to warn both the characters and the audience of the tectonic shifts in fate. This technique masterfully integrates the plot with the world, erasing the line between the internal journey of the hero and the external reality they inhabit. It creates a story that feels deeply atmospheric and immersive, because the universe itself seems to be emotionally and morally invested in the outcome. The storm that brews on the horizon is not just weather, it is the physical manifestation of a king's rising rage. The sudden, unnerving silence of the forest birds is not just an absence of sound, it is a collective holding of breath, a natural world sensing a predator it cannot see. This suggests a profound, almost sacred connection between the characters and their environment. The land is not a resource to be used, but a partner in the story, a character with its own voice and its own stakes in the events. A hero who is destined to save the kingdom might be born on a night when a new star appears, tying his fate to the heavens. A city built on a foundation of betrayal might be perpetually shrouded in a melancholic fog, the land itself unable to forget the original sin. This form of foreshadowing asks us to read the world as carefully as we read the characters. It teaches us that every element of a scene, no matter how mundane, could be a clue. The unseasonal warmth that blankets a funeral, the pack of wolves that watches a traveler with unusual stillness, the single tree that blooms out of season in a courtyard, each detail is a thread in the tapestry, hinting at a future harmony or a coming rupture. The environment becomes the story's subconscious, expressing truths the characters are not yet ready to voice. A story told by a fire can be a map for a journey not yet taken. This fifth trick of foreshadowing is the ancestral story within a story, where a tale from the deep past is recounted, and its ancient shape perfectly mirrors the challenge unfolding in the present. It is not merely a lesson, it is a blueprint, a narrative echo that foreshadows the outcome of the current crisis by showing you an older version of the same battle. The great Indian epic, the Ramayana, is woven through with this device. As Prince Rama faces the seemingly impossible task of defeating the demon king Ravana, he is told stories. He hears of the previous avatars of the god Vishnu, like the dwarf Vamana who tricked a king into giving him 3 paces of land and then covered the universe in 2 steps. This is not a simple history lesson, it is a coded message. It tells Rama and the audience that the current conflict is part of a much larger cyclical pattern. The victory of good over arrogant evil has happened before, and it will follow a similar, divinely clever template. The past becomes a playbook. This technique adds immense depth and a sense of timelessness to the narrative. The current protagonists are not just acting on their own, they are stepping into roles that have been performed across the ages. Their struggles are given a cosmic context. When a wise sage tells a story of a hero who overcame a tyrant not by brute force, but by understanding a hidden weakness, the listeners in the story, and we the audience, are being given a crucial clue. The subsequent choices of the heroes become profoundly weighted because they are now conscious of the pattern. They can choose to follow the successful path of the ancestral story, or they can ignore its warning and risk repeating its tragedies. This transforms their journey from a blind adventure into a deliberate, almost ritualistic reenactment of a sacred victory. They are not just fighting a monster, they are fulfilling a story that the universe has been telling since the dawn of time. It makes their personal courage part of a grand, eternal design, and it asks us to consider what ancient stories we ourselves are living out, and whether we are following the map or doomed to repeat the mistakes. A character's own words can become the cage that traps them. This sixth foreshadowing trick is the linguistic double entendre, where a simple sentence carries a hidden, prophetic meaning that only becomes clear in the blinding light of later events. Language itself becomes a puzzle box, and the key to the future is hidden in the plain words of the present. This is the classic weapon of the oracle, whose prophecies are designed to be misunderstood until it is too late. The most famous example comes from the legend of the Gordian knot. An oracle declared that the man who could untie the impossibly tangled knot would become the ruler of all Asia. For generations, the knot defied every clever mind and steady hand. Then came Alexander the Great. He looked at the problem, considered the words of the prophecy, and in one swift motion drew his sword and sliced the knot in half. He understood that the oracle never specified how the knot had to be undone. The double meaning was in the verb to untie. It could mean to patiently loosen, or it could mean to sever the problem entirely. Alexander's interpretation fulfilled the prophecy in a way no one had anticipated, because he listened to the language not for its literal constraint, but for its hidden possibility. This trick transforms the audience into active decoders. When a wise woman warns a king to beware the one who walks without moving, we do not simply file it away as a mystery. We start scanning every character, every scene, looking for the fulfillment. Is it a ghost? Is it a statue? Is it a child carried in a procession? The phrase "a man who is no man" might foreshadow a victory achieved by a eunuch, a boy too young for battle, or even a woman disguised as a warrior. The truth was there in the words all along, wrapped in a layer of misdirection. This showcases the incredible slipperiness and power of language in myth. It tells us that truth is not always a single, solid thing, but often a multifaceted gem that only reveals its full brilliance when viewed from the angle of the story's conclusion. It forces us to consider how many of our own certainties are built on a single, literal interpretation of the words we hear, and what profound truths we might be missing that are hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal their second, deeper meaning. A single, recurring word can cast a long shadow over an entire story. This is the seventh foreshadowing trick, the thematic leitmotif, where a musical phrase, a visual symbol, or a poetic line is woven through the narrative like a golden thread, always tied to a specific character, idea, or inevitable fate. Its repetition is a quiet drumbeat, building a subconscious association in the audience long before the final revelation arrives. In the stark, beautiful world of Norse mythology, the word twilight is this kind of leitmotif. It is not used just to describe the time of day. It is a constant, haunting refrain. The gods do not merely live, they exist in a perpetual twilight of their own power, a golden age that is already fading. Every time a skald mentions the twilight or a character gazes at the dimming light, the story is whispering a single, terrifying word: Ragnarok. This is not a direct prophecy, it is an atmospheric one. It prepares the audience not with a specific prediction, but with a mood, a feeling of elegant, inescapable decline. Each recurrence of the motif deepens the sense of dread, making the eventual arrival of the final battle feel less like a sudden event and more like a tide that has been slowly coming in for the entire saga. This technique embeds the story's grandest themes directly into its structural bones. Think of a specific melody that always accompanies a particular character's entrance in a film score. You do not need to see the character to feel their presence. The music has already told you they are near. In a myth, a leitmotif works the same way. A certain type of flower that blooms whenever a goddess of spring is mentioned, or a specific animal that appears at moments of great transformation. These are not decorative details. They are narrative anchors. When that symbol reappears later under different circumstances, it triggers a deep, almost instinctual understanding in the audience. We feel the connection before we can logically explain it. This creates a rich, layered experience where the plot operates on two levels simultaneously: the immediate action and the symbolic, thematic current flowing just beneath the surface. The leitmotif transforms the story from a sequence of events into a symphony of interconnected ideas, where every repeated note is a promise and a warning, building a world that feels destined, profound, and deeply, hauntingly beautiful. Even the most carefully laid clue can be a deliberate lie. The eighth trick of foreshadowing is the red herring, a narrative feint where the story builds a powerful expectation only to pull the rug out from under it, revealing the true path was hidden somewhere else entirely. This is the art of strategic misdirection, proving the storyteller is not just a guide but a magician, controlling what you see and what you overlook. A myth might spend considerable time building up one character as the prophesied hero. They bear all the marks, they receive the special weapon, and the wise elders nod in their direction. The audience is convinced, investing emotionally in this destined path. Then, in a stunning reversal, the prophecy is fulfilled by someone entirely unexpected. The quiet servant, the dismissed second son, the character everyone ignored. The shock is not one of confusion, but of brilliant recontextualization. You realize you were led to look at the left hand while the real magic was happening with the right. This trick does more than just surprise. It actively trains the audience to question everything. It mirrors the genuine uncertainty and peril the characters face within the story. Just as they cannot be sure who to trust, neither can we. When a second character is introduced with a mysterious past, we are no longer quick to assume they are the secret savior. We wonder if they are another distraction, another piece of theatrical smoke designed to obscure the real narrative machinery. This technique showcases a deep respect for the audience's intelligence. It challenges us to be active, skeptical participants, to engage with the story on a level beyond simple acceptance. The red herring makes the final revelation far more powerful because it is earned through a process of deception and discovery. The true outcome feels genuinely unexpected, yet in hindsight perfectly logical. The clues for the real hero were there all along, quietly placed in the shadow of the dazzling decoy. This narrative gamble teaches a profound lesson about perception and reality. It suggests that the most obvious path is often a trap, and that truth prefers to reveal itself in the quiet spaces between the loudest promises. The story reminds us that destiny is a subtle thing, and it rarely announces its arrival with a fanfare meant for someone else. The agony of knowing a secret no one will believe is a unique form of torture. This ninth foreshadowing trick centers on the unheeded warning, a cry of truth that falls on willfully deaf ears, sealing the fate of everyone involved. The Trojan princess Cassandra is its tragic archetype, blessed with the gift of prophecy by the god Apollo, but cursed so that her accurate predictions would forever be dismissed as madness. She saw the Greek soldiers hiding inside the wooden horse. She pleaded with her people not to bring it within their impregnable walls, and she was ignored. Her truth was a scream in a soundproof room. This technique masterfully generates dramatic irony, a state where we in the audience possess crucial knowledge that the characters on screen lack. We hear Cassandra's desperate, lucid warnings, and we watch in mounting dread as the Trojans celebrate their supposed victory and drag the very instrument of their doom through the gates. Our knowledge makes their joy unbearable, their confidence a prelude to catastrophe. The story is no longer a simple mystery about what will happen. It becomes a profound tragedy about why it cannot be stopped. The tension shifts from suspense about the outcome to a painful empathy for the seer and a frustrated anguish toward the blind. This device explores the fatal flaw of hubris, the arrogance that makes men believe they know better than the gods or their own prophets. A king flushed with victory dismisses the old soothsayer's mumbled caution. A warrior confident in his strength laughs at the mention of a hidden weakness. Their refusal to listen is not just a plot point, it is the very engine of their downfall. The warning was the exit door, and they walked past it, convinced there was no danger. This lends the narrative a crushing sense of inevitability. The ending feels predestined not because of an abstract prophecy, but because of a concrete human failure to heed good counsel. The pathos, the emotional sorrow, comes from watching good people make the one wrong choice that unravels everything, a choice the story clearly showed them was wrong. It forces us to reflect on the Cassandras in our own lives, the voices we dismiss as alarmist or pessimistic. Are we, in our own confidence, ignoring the clear warnings that could save us from a coming storm? The unheeded warning is a narrative mirror held up to our own potential for pride, and the tragic cost of believing we are too smart to be told we are wrong. A building's very stones can tell the story of what is to come. The architectural foreshadowing trick turns the physical world into a silent, prophetic character, where the design of a palace, a city, or a labyrinth is not just a setting, but a massive, three-dimensional clue. The myth of Theseus and the Minotaur offers the ultimate blueprint for this device. The labyrinth of Crete is far more than a monster's lair. Its endless, twisting corridors, its identical passages leading to dead ends, are a perfect physical representation of the political and personal traps that ensnare the hero. King Minos, who ordered its construction, is himself trapped in a web of shame and vengeance. The Princess Ariadne is trapped by her loyalty to a monstrous half-brother and a tyrannical father. And Theseus, the outsider, willingly walks into this stone puzzle, a metaphor for the complex, dangerous court of Minos where one wrong turn, one misspoken word could mean death. The labyrinth does not just house the conflict, it explains it. Its impossible geometry foreshadows the mental and moral maze the hero must solve. He cannot simply overpower the Minotaur, he must outthink the entire structure, just as he must outmaneuver the political machinations of the king. When Ariadne gives him the ball of thread, she is not just offering a tool, she is providing the key to linear thought in a non-linear world, a way to impose a clear, simple narrative onto chaos. This architectural prophecy can be woven into the smallest details. A castle built with one tower significantly higher than all the others might foreshadow the arrogant pride, the hubris, of the lord who lives there, a pride that will be his literal and metaphorical downfall. A city designed with streets that all converge on a single, central temple tells you, long before the climax, that every path in this story leads back to faith, or to the power of the priesthood. The environment becomes a map to the story's soul. It allows for a layer of storytelling that is felt before it is understood. On a first viewing, the labyrinth is just a scary place. But upon reflection, its genius is revealed. It was never just a building. It was the story itself, carved in stone, a promise of the tangled, claustrophobic, and inescapable journey that every character was about to take. The walls were whispering the plot all along. A prophecy does not just predict the future, it builds the very walls of the labyrinth the hero must navigate. This is the masterful interweaving of loops and foreshadowing, where the two techniques lock together like gears in an intricate clock. A single oracular statement can simultaneously establish a time loop and hide the key to breaking it within its own poetic language. The loop presents the inescapable prison, while the foreshadowing secretly maps the escape route, rewarding an audience that listens not just to the words, but to the spaces between them. This synergy creates a narrative fabric of incredible density, where every element serves multiple purposes across different timelines of the story. A character's casual remark in the first act might seem like simple dialogue, but it later resonates as a crucial piece of foreshadowing for a future event, which itself is part of a larger, cyclical pattern established generations ago. The story ceases to be a straight line and becomes a web, with every strand connected and vibrating in harmony. This intricate design is what makes legends feel timeless. They are not consumed in a single sitting, they are explored. Each new encounter with the story reveals a hidden connection you missed before. You notice that the description of a forgotten king's crown, mentioned only in a historical aside, perfectly matches the artifact the hero finds centuries later, instantly tying their two eras together in a shared fate. The story rewards your attention, making you a co-creator of its meaning. This layered architecture explains why we return to these myths again and again. They are not puzzles to be solved once, but deep wells from which we can always draw new understanding. The feeling that every detail matters, that nothing is wasted, gives the narrative a profound sense of purpose and inevitability, as if you are witnessing a truth that was always meant to be, its roots buried deep in the very first word. A king's desperate attempt to murder his own infant son is the very first step that locks the prophecy into motion. The story of Oedipus is a masterfully engineered trap, and every piece of its machinery, from the grand pronouncement of the oracle to the tiniest physical detail, serves to tighten the snare. The foreshadowing is woven into the very flesh of the hero, in the scars on his ankles from the pins that bound him. His name, Oedipus, literally translates to swollen foot, a constant, painful reminder of the original sin of his abandonment, a clue to his identity that he carries with every step he takes. This is not subtle symbolism, it is a brand, a mark of destiny written on the body, yet he remains oblivious to its meaning. The loop is constructed with such diabolical precision that every rational choice becomes a fatal error. When Oedipus flees Corinth to avoid harming the people he believes are his parents, he is acting with clear-minded intention and moral courage. He is trying to be a good son. Yet this virtuous decision places him directly on the road to his real father, setting the stage for the fatal quarrel that fulfills the first half of the prophecy. His intelligence, which allows him to solve the riddle of the Sphinx and save Thebes, is the same intelligence that makes him doggedly pursue the truth about the old king's murder, even as everyone around him begs him to stop. His greatest strengths, his determination and his sharp mind, become the instruments of his own destruction. The audience is made to witness this grueling paradox in agonizing detail. We see the pieces of the puzzle long before Oedipus does, and we understand the terrible significance of every revelation. When the messenger arrives to tell him that his supposed father in Corinth has died of natural causes, Oedipus feels a moment of relief, believing he has escaped the prophecy. But we, the audience, know this news only deepens the trap, for it reveals that the man he feared killing is already dead, forcing the question of who his real parents truly are. This relentless dramatic irony is the story's true engine. We are not waiting to discover the truth, we are waiting for the devastating moment the hero discovers it himself. The structure forces us to confront the limits of human agency. Were any of their choices truly free? If his parents had raised him with love, would he have ever left? If Oedipus had been a less moral man, would he have pursued the truth so relentlessly? The tragedy suggests that within the grand design of the gods, our free will is not erased, but rather absorbed, our every virtue and flaw meticulously calculated into an equation that always ends the same way. The power of the Oedipus cycle lies in this perfect, horrifying harmony between character and destiny, a loop that feels both cruelly unjust and mathematically inevitable, leaving us to wonder if our own lives are a path we walk or a story that is walking us. A cursed ring forged from stolen gold becomes a vortex of endless tragedy. Richard Wagner's epic opera cycle, The Ring of the Nibelung, is not a straight line but a vast descending spiral, where a single object pulls generation after generation into its orbit of greed and betrayal. The ring itself is a perfect loop, a self-fulfilling prophecy of power. It grants its bearer dominion over the world, but the curse placed upon it by its dwarf creator, Alberich, ensures that love will forever be forsaken by whoever possesses it. This creates an inescapable cycle, A god, Wotan, steals it, only to have it taken by a giant. A hero, Siegfried, wins it, only to be betrayed and murdered for it. The ring always returns to the river, to the Rhine maidens from whom it was originally stolen, but only after it has drained the life and love from every hand that held it. This is not a story about breaking a curse, but about the terrible, repetitive cost of trying to wield its power. Wagner masterfully underscores this spiral with his revolutionary use of leitmotifs. These are not mere musical themes, they are sonic prophecies. A single, ominous chord progression announces the ring's presence long before it appears on stage. The melody associated with a hero's sword whispers of its future shattering on a spear. The listener's ear is trained to hear the future in the present. When the ring's leitmotif slithers into a love scene, it foreshadows the betrayal that love will inevitably suffer. When the sword's theme rings out, we feel the promise of a victory we know will be temporary. The music itself becomes a time machine, connecting actions across decades and binding them to a single, tragic pattern. This grand, nonlinear structure allows the story to function as a myth for the modern age. The ring's endless cycle of acquisition and loss mirrors the destructive nature of unchecked capitalism, where the pursuit of wealth consumes all human feeling. The gods' desperate attempts to control the ring's power reflect the corrupting nature of political authority. The entire sprawling narrative asks if redemption is possible, not by possessing the ring, but by finally renouncing it, by breaking the loop of desire itself. Wagner's time spiral shows us that the most profound stories are often those that turn back on themselves, forcing us to watch the same fatal mistake made by different faces, in the haunting hope that someone, someday, will finally choose a different path. A single misstep in a past life can echo for centuries. The sprawling Chinese epic journey to the West presents a universe governed not by tragic fate, but by the precise, often humorous mathematics of karma. Here, the time loops are spiritual debts, and the main characters are all trapped in cycles of their own past arrogance. The monk Tripitaka was once the golden cicada, a disciple of the Buddha who dozed off during a sermon, a moment of disrespect that condemns him to repeated reincarnation and peril. The celestial pig spirit Zhu Beiji was once a marshal in heaven, whose drunken advances toward the moon goddess resulted in his banishment into the body of a monster. Their epic quest to retrieve sacred Buddhist scriptures from India is on its surface a linear pilgrimage, but its true narrative engine is the looping, karmic necessity for each character to atone for their specific failures, to work off the cosmic debt accrued in their previous existences. Every monster they face, every river they cross, is less a random obstacle and more a personalized lesson sent by the heavens, a test designed to sand down a particular rough edge of their souls. This structure transforms the entire journey into a school for enlightenment, where the external landscape is a direct reflection of their internal karmic baggage. The foreshadowing of these trials is delivered not by a grim oracle, but through the irreverent, all-knowing eyes of the Monkey King, Sun Wukong. Having achieved immense power and near immortality through his own rebellious past, he often perceives the hidden nature of events long before his master. He might leap onto a cloud, peer into the distance, and turn back with a grinning remark about the fake monastery ahead, a place run by demons who will, of course, try to eat them. His previews are not dire warnings but boasts. He is not frightened of the future, he is excited by it because he already knows he is destined to overcome it. This comic foreshadowing creates a unique and delightful tension. We are told the danger is coming, but we are also assured of the hero's triumphant capacity to handle it. The suspense shifts from whether they will survive to the hilarious and inventive ways Monkey will expose the deception and subdue the foe. His knowledge pulls the audience into a position of complicity. We are not fearing the monster with Tripitaka. We are eagerly awaiting the moment Monkey will reveal the monster for the fool it is. This blend of profound karmic cycles and playful anticipation makes the epic endlessly engaging. It demonstrates that these powerful narrative devices are not reserved for tales of grim destiny. They can be the framework for a story that is, at its heart, about the joyous, chaotic, and often funny process of self-improvement. The loops are not inescapable prisons but challenging courses, and the foreshadowing is not a sentence but a playful wink, inviting us to enjoy the ride as much as the destination. A Celtic knot has no true beginning and no definitive end. This intricate artistry finds its narrative echo in the ancient Welsh collection known as the Mabinogion, where stories do not proceed in a straight line but coil and loop back on themselves in a vast, interconnected web. Here, time behaves less like a river and more like a tapestry being woven from all directions at once. A hero introduced in one branch of the mythology might appear as a supporting character in another, and their past deeds, seemingly resolved, suddenly resurface to dictate the terms of a future conflict generations later. The legendary figure of Pryderi, for instance, is born in the first branch, loses and regains his kingdom, and his life thread is then woven through the other tales, his fate ultimately sealed by a rivalry that began long before his own story started. This is not a series of sequels but a single, sprawling narrative scene from different vantage points. The structure itself teaches the audience to think in patterns rather than sequences. You are not simply following one hero's journey from call to adventure to return. You are learning a map of relationships, a genealogy of cause and effect that operates across centuries, where the consequences of an insult or a broken promise might lie dormant for an entire tale, only to blossom into a new crisis in the next. This creates a uniquely holistic form of storytelling. The entire body of myth feels like one living organism, with each story a vital organ dependent on the others. When a magical cauldron of rebirth appears in one branch, its origins and ultimate fate are detailed in another, making its presence in the first story infinitely richer. You are not getting a single piece of a puzzle, you are being shown how that piece is connected to a dozen others you have already seen. This challenges our modern, linear expectations of plot. The satisfaction comes not from a final, climactic resolution, but from the gradual dawning awareness of the grand design. It asks you to hold multiple timelines in your mind simultaneously, to see the past of one character as the future of another, and to understand that no story ever truly stands alone. In this Celtic worldview, every tale is a single thread in a much larger, more beautiful, and endlessly complex pattern. A pattern that can only be understood not by where the thread ends, but by all the other threads it touches along the way. Our own memories refuse to follow a straight line. We do not recall our lives as a simple list of events from birth to now. A certain scent can suddenly pull you back to your grandmother's kitchen decades ago. A piece of music can make you relive a first heartbreak with startling clarity. Our minds are not filing cabinets, they are vast, associative networks, constantly connecting moments across time based on emotion and sensation. This is the deep psychological reason why nonlinear stories feel so intuitive and satisfying. They are not an artificial construct, they mirror the fundamental architecture of human consciousness itself. When a myth uses a time loop or a flashback, it is speaking our brain's native language. We are pattern recognition machines, wired to find connections and causality in the world around us. A straightforward, linear tale gives us the pattern ready-made, but a nonlinear story invites us to become active participants in the pattern making. When we spot a piece of foreshadowing from an earlier scene, or when we finally understand how a past event is causing a present crisis, our brain rewards us with a delicious hit of dopamine. It is the thrill of solving a puzzle, of seeing the hidden picture emerge from the noise. This cognitive workout is intensely rewarding, making us feel smart, engaged, and intimately connected to the narrative. We are not just being told a story, we are co-creating its meaning alongside the storyteller. This is why a legend that plays with time does not feel confusing, but instead feels profoundly true. It reflects our own internal experience of being a person, a continuous present constantly being reinterpreted through the lens of a shifting past and an imagined future. The most powerful stories understand that we are all time travelers in our own minds, and they craft their plots to journey with us. The same ancient mechanism that trapped Sisyphus now plays out in a small Pennsylvania town with a cynical weatherman at its center. The film Groundhog Day perfectly translates the mythic redemption loop for a contemporary world, replacing gods and curses with personal stagnation and existential dread. Phil Connors is not punished by a divine decree, but by the emptiness of his own life. Each repetition of the same day is a merciless mirror held up to his soul, forcing him to confront the shallow patterns of his behavior until he finally breaks and begins to build a new self from the inside out. The lesson is the same one taught by the oldest myths, that true transformation requires confronting the same challenge until its hidden meaning is revealed. Modern versions like the series Russian Doll add new layers of psychological complexity. Here, the protagonist Nadia is not just repeating a day, but dying at its end, forcing a confrontation with mortality and trauma that is more intimate and internal. The cosmic has become personal, yet the narrative engine remains identical, repetition as a brutal but effective curriculum for the human spirit. The foreshadowing in these stories is often wordless, communicated through the language of cinema itself. A recurring shot of a clock at the same time each loop, a character who always wears the same distinctive item of clothing, or a piece of music that cues the reset. These are the modern equivalents of the oracular utterance. The editing creates a visual rhythm of déjà vu, training the audience to recognize the subtle signs of the cycle before the characters do. A crack in the wall might grow larger with each iteration, a visual metaphor for the protagonist's fracturing psyche. The mise-en scene, the deliberate arrangement of everything within the frame, becomes a treasure map of clues. In one loop, a background news headline might be ignored, but in the next, its significance screams out because we have been taught by the structure to look for patterns in the environment. This cinematic shorthand allows for a more immediate and intuitive form of storytelling, one that trusts the audience to feel the loop as much as understand it. The fact that these ancient narrative bones can be so effortlessly dressed in modern clothing, from a romantic comedy to a mind-bending psychological drama, is a testament to their raw power. They are not rigid templates, but flexible tools that can be sharpened to dissect any era's particular anxieties. Whether the prison is a mythological underworld or a trendy New York apartment building, the fundamental human struggle remains the same: the fight to find meaning within the cycles of our existence, and the hope that we can learn enough to finally step out of them. This master key to legendary plots now sits in your own hands. For any storyteller, understanding these 34 loops and tricks is not about memorizing a list, but about learning a new way of thinking. It is the shift from seeing a story as a straight line to seeing it as a rich, multidimensional tapestry. The first step is always to look inward, to define the single, powerful theme or lesson beating at the heart of your tale. Is it a story about the futility of escaping destiny or the redemptive power of second chances? Once you know the core truth you want to explore, the choice of a time loop becomes intuitive. A story about breaking free from a toxic legacy demands the ancestral curse loop. A story about personal growth cries out for the redemption loop of repetition. The structure is not a cage, it is the skeleton that gives your thematic muscles a frame to move upon. With that foundation in place, you begin the delicate art of weaving in foreshadowing. This is where you plant the seeds of your ending in the soil of your beginning. The art is to make these clues visible but not obvious, like a familiar face in a crowd that only becomes significant later. A character might casually mention a childhood fear of water, a detail that feels like simple character building until the final act, when the hero must cross a treacherous river and that specific fear becomes the central obstacle. You are not hiding things from your audience, you are trusting them. You are giving them the pieces of the puzzle, confident that when the final image snaps into place, they will feel the immense satisfaction of having subconsciously helped you build it. They feel smart, and in return, they form a deep, lasting bond with your story. The best way to hone this craft is to become an active archaeologist of myth. Revisit your favorite legends, but this time watch with a creator's eye. Pause the film or close the book and ask yourself, how did they do that? Note the exact moment the symbolic object first appears and trace its journey to the climax. Map out the steps of the prophecy loop, identifying each choice that seemed free but was actually locking the trap. See how the environment whispers its warnings in the first chapter. By reverse engineering the work of the masters, you internalize the rhythm and logic of nonlinear storytelling. Then, take that refined understanding and pour it into your own world. Build your own labyrinth, knowing every corridor is there for a reason. Forge your own cursed ring, understanding the cyclical tragedy it must create. Write your own prophecy, and then, with a sly smile, hide the key to breaking it within the poetic ambiguity of its own words. Even the most intricate tapestry can unravel from a single loose thread. A time loop or a piece of foreshadowing, if handled carelessly, can shatter the audience's belief in the story world, pulling them out of the magic and into a frustrating search for logic that no longer holds. The most common failure is a plot hole born from inconsistency. If you establish that a character can only relive a day 3 times, but then a 4th repetition occurs without explanation, the entire structure collapses. The audience feels cheated, their intelligence insulted. The rules of your narrative world, however fantastical, must be as solid and reliable as the laws of physics in our own. They are the foundation upon which all the wonder is built, and if that foundation cracks, the entire edifice tumbles down. Another fatal error is foreshadowing that is far too obvious. When every clue is underlined in bright red, the story becomes a simple connect-the-dots picture, robbing the audience of the joy of discovery. There is no aha moment, only a slow, predictable march toward an ending everyone saw coming from the first act. The subtlety is lost, and with it, the deep, rewarding engagement that comes from feeling like a co-detective in the story. These techniques should never be used as mere decoration, a clever trick to show off the writer's cleverness. A time loop inserted just for novelty, or a symbolic object that has no real bearing on the characters' inner lives, feels hollow and gimmicky. The structure must always serve the theme and the characters. What is the emotional cost of reliving the same day for the 100th time? How does the weight of a prophecy truly change a person's soul from the inside out? The greatest pitfall of all is becoming so enamored with the complex clockwork of your plot that you forget the human heart beating at its center. The loops and the foreshadowing are not the point, they are the instruments. The true music comes from the characters' struggles, their growth, their fears, and their loves. The audience will forgive 1,000 narrative complexities if they are emotionally invested in the people experiencing them. They will follow you through any labyrinth as long as they care about the person holding the thread. A story that knows its own ending can still make us believe in choice. This is the profound paradox at the heart of every great time loop and every carefully placed clue. These narrative devices force a confrontation with one of humanity's oldest debates, the struggle between fate and free will. When we watch Oedipus march toward his doom, or Phil Connors repeat the same day for the 100th time, we are not just being entertained, we are being asked a philosophical question in the form of a story. Does the existence of a prophecy mean our lives are a script we are powerless to edit, or does the very act of struggling against it prove our freedom? The greatest myths never give a simple answer. They live in the agonizing, beautiful tension between the two. They show us characters making genuine, heartfelt choices, only to have those choices weave themselves into the tapestry of a destiny that seems to have been waiting for them all along. This is where storytelling transcends entertainment and becomes a deeply ethical act. Every time a writer employs a prophecy or a time loop, they are making a subtle statement about the nature of reality and our place within it. Are we the captains of our souls, or are we merely passengers on a train whose destination was set long before we boarded? The stories we tell and the stories we choose to listen to shape our fundamental beliefs about human agency. A narrative that presents destiny as an unbreakable chain can teach resignation, a sense that our efforts are ultimately futile against the tides of a pre-written plot. Conversely, a story that shows a character breaking a cycle through conscious effort and moral growth reinforces the power of individual will. As creators, we hold a responsibility to consider the message we are embedding in our plots. Are we building labyrinths with no exit, or are we hiding a thread of hope that can only be found through courage and selflessness? As an audience, we have a parallel responsibility to be conscious consumers of these narratives, to question the worldview they present. Do they inspire us to see ourselves as active authors of our own lives, or as passive readers of a book we cannot change? The ethical weight of a story lies in this very question. When we craft a legend, we are not just arranging events. We are offering a model of the universe and implicitly asking others to live inside it. Every story we tell is a vessel for something larger than itself. These legendary plots, with their intricate loops and hidden clues, are far more than simple amusement. They are the cultural DNA of entire civilizations, the primary tools our ancestors used to encode their most profound wisdom, their most paralyzing fears, and their most cherished values into a form that could survive the centuries. The cyclical promise of a hero's return, like Arthur sleeping in Avalon, is not just a satisfying ending. It is a narrative machine for producing hope, a reassurance that no darkness is permanent and that aid is always imaginable in a world that often feels chaotic and unjust. Conversely, the foreshadowed tragedy of a figure like Oedipus serves as a stark, unforgettable warning. It is a cultural lesson about the dangers of hubris, the limits of human knowledge, and the unintended consequences that can spiral from a single act of arrogance or fear. These stories were the original classrooms, teaching ethics through the visceral experience of a character's rise and fall, imparting history through epic journeys, and explaining the cosmos through the daily battle of a sun god against the serpent of chaos. When you grasp the mechanics of a time loop or a prophetic symbol, you are not just learning a writer's trick, you are being handed a key to the collective mind of a culture. The endless karmic cycles of the Ramayana reveal a world view obsessed with moral cause and effect, where every action ripples across lifetimes. The self-correcting timelines guarded by the fates reflect a Greek belief in an inescapable cosmic order that humbles even the proudest king. By understanding why a certain plot structure resonated so deeply, we learn what a people valued, what they feared, and how they understood their place in the universe. This understanding builds a bridge across time, revealing the universal human concerns that connect a Mesopotamian scribe writing of Gilgamesh to a modern screenwriter crafting a story about reliving the same day. We all grapple with the same core questions about fate and free will, about the weight of the past and the nature of a good life. These legendary plots are humanity's enduring answer, a conversation spanning millennia, whispering that our deepest struggles are not ours alone. A new storyteller is emerging from the digital forge, one that knows your name. Artificial intelligence and interactive media are not discarding the ancient loops we have explored. They are supercharging them, transforming these timeless narrative engines into deeply personal and participatory experiences. Imagine an AI that does not just tell you a story about a time loop, but constructs one uniquely for you. It analyzes the choices you make, the characters you favor, even the pace at which you read, and then designs a cyclical narrative tailored to your own psychological profile. Your personal struggle with procrastination could become the central challenge of a redemption loop, where you must learn to value time itself to break free. The ancestral curse haunting a family in a novel could, in an interactive game, be a curse that only you, the player, can break by making a series of selfless choices that your in-game ancestors never could. The loop is no longer a spectacle you watch, but a puzzle you inhabit where your own moral compass becomes the key. Foreshadowing becomes a living, breathing thing in this new landscape. In a traditional story, the clue is planted once, a static promise of what is to come. But in an interactive drama, foreshadowing can adapt. If you, the player, consistently ignore references to a particular symbol, the game might introduce it more prominently or through a different character, guiding your attention without breaking the immersion. A line of dialogue might change subtly on your second playthrough, hinting at a betrayal you never saw coming the first time, because your actions the first time around did not warrant that particular future. This dynamic foreshadowing makes the narrative feel truly responsive, as if the story itself is alive and learning from you. This evolution fundamentally blurs the line between audience and protagonist. You are no longer just following Gilgamesh's grief or Sisyphus's labor. You are feeling the weight of the boulder in your own hands. You are making the choices that will either perpetuate the cycle or shatter it. The emotional stakes are magnified 1,000-fold because the responsibility for the outcome rests, at least in part, with you. The legends of tomorrow will not be carved in stone or written on a page. They will be grown in the fertile ground of our own choices, offering a different kind of magic, the magic of a story that truly knows you and changes because it